So I'm making this video in between my extremely busy class schedule, so please excuse the terribly edited video. These are just going to be my brief, quick, instant reaction thoughts to The Batman, which I had the opportunity to go watch 2 days early through the DC Fan First experience for a more in-depth discussion and analysis of the film. Head over to Spotify and stream what will be the latest episode of Onomatopoeia, the Pop Cast. That episode on the Batman will probably be out later this weekend, which will be March 5th or 6th. So right off the bat, I just want to get this out there. The Batman is the Batman. Like, it is the definitive Batman movie in so many different aspects. First off, I think I've seen a lot of people talk about this, but the cinematography of the movie, Greg Fraser, he did the cinematography for Dune, and I mean I love the cinematography in Dune, but I think this one was very experimental at times. You know, he was really trying something new. He was trying to tell us a story in a very unique way in certain points, especially with like the blurred camera, which I'm not sure if that was. I think it elevated the movie, but it was also a nice little way to get around the whole gruesome aspect of this movie while maintaining the PG-13 rating. But he really used like the blur or like a hyper focus on a single element, and that just really stood out. That stood out. I think the color, there was a use of wide angles, extreme close-ups on Batman, so we were like seeing his eyes, we were seeing expression from Bruce Wayne, which is in part to Robert Pattinson's performance, but also the way that they were using these shot types to really get into our characters, but then also, you know, like the wider shots, the cowboy shots sort of thing, a real like showdown, and utilizing that lighting. This movie is really dark. Like it's a really dark movie, and they use that to sort of hide the Batman from our view, and he kind of appears. He is literally the shadows in so many different scenes. So the cinematography, I think, is great. The score, I've been listening to the score for like the past week. It is so great. I mean, the score is probably Michael Giacchino's best work. I wasn't too big on the No Way Home score. I think it was pretty good. It was alright, but like I understand why that one wasn't that great. And it's because he was putting all his effort into this score right here. And yeah, it has an eeriness to it that amplifies a lot of the scenes, but there's also a sense of hope within some of within whenever Batman is on screen. It's not just like scary, intimidating. There's also a fringe of hope that comes throughout, which is a nice little touch that wraps up nicely by the end of the movie. So cinematography, score was great. Sound design, I know this is something a lot of people don't necessarily talk about, but Jesus, the sound design of this was insane. You felt the punches, you felt the steps that were being taken when the Batmobile revs up. You feel it in your seat, you know. It's just, yeah, the sound design of that is great. I think also another thing, back to the whole cinematography, I guess this kind of also goes in line with the plot, but I know they use the latest like technology thing that they use on like the Mandalorian instead of a green screen for a lot of the backgrounds, but they also used a lot of like set pieces and practical, like it looks like the city is actually built and it's shot on like not on location, but the production design of this, I guess, is also something that it immerses you within Gotham. You feel grimy, and it's kind of gross at times how ugly Gotham City is. Yeah, I think also, yeah, and then there's a lot of grays, but then there's also a lot of like oranges, and there's a lot of use of color throughout this movie, which whenever that color is used, because it's set against this like dark city, this dark production design, it really stands out. Um, so yeah, that, I guess on the technical standpoint, it's really, yeah, Matt Reeves brings it all together. I mean, there's so much going on. Everyone's putting their absolute maximum effort into everything, and Matt Reeves kind of brings it all together. Of course, though, this would all kind of have gone to waste if it weren't for the performances, I think, of the movie, which Paul Dano as the Riddler is one of the weirdest choices ever. Because Paul Dano is not an intimidating guy by any means, but the way they play off of that, he's probably perfect casting, and his Riddler, I think, it's up there with some of the best, with some of the best comic book movie villains and Batman villains. You know, I wouldn't say it rivals Heath Ledger. They're completely different characters, so I guess you can't really compare them. But it's up there. You know, it's like an S tier villain for the Batman and the way that he challenges him. Robert Pattinson as Batman, Bruce Wayne, is really good. I'm not surprised. I knew he was gonna blow this out of the water. His Bruce Wayne is quiet, stoic, calculated, and his Batman is just like ferocious. There's this anger like brewing underneath him at all times. But then the intellectual aspect of it was also pretty cool. I think it's what really amazes me with Robert Pattinson's performance is how he has this cowl on and he's still able to manage to convey emotions. But Pattinson wasn't the standout performance for me. The standout performances, I would say, were Colin Farrell as the Penguin and Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. I'm not a huge fan of Zoe Kravitz. I haven't really seen too much of her work. I think I've seen her in the Divergent series, and she's in X-Men First Class. I haven't seen High Fidelity. I'm not sure what else she's in. I know she voices Catwoman in the Lego Batman movie. But I think she looked great as Catwoman. She had great chemistry with Robert Pattinson, and that's all I could really pick up on before I seen the movie. And then I watched the movie, and Zoe Kravitz absolutely killed it. You know, I didn't consider her too strong of an actor from what I had seen, but she kills it. She rivals, like, she's so much smaller than Batman, but yet her presence is like just as big. And the way that she kind of tests Bruce in this, it's a really great adaptation of Catwoman. And then of course Colin Farrell as the Penguin. He's unrecognizable because of makeup and all. And you know, it could be like Jared Leto in House of Gucci, where it's all this makeup and costume and hairstyling that's kind of beating on his performance. But Colin Farrell, like, yeah, he has that aspect to his Penguin, but he really delivers this mobster sort of performance that it reminded me of almost like Robert De Niro or Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. He's very kind of chaotic and impulsive, and it fits the Penguin, who's always trying to like prove himself. But yeah, and he was really fun to watch. Every scene with him in it was funny, or there was something going on. He was very like much the comedic aspect of the movie. But I would say that my favorite scene of the entire movie, which it's a little tough, so I'm gonna have to give two scenes here. Spoiler warning going into this part right here. Spoiler warning: do not keep listening if you haven't seen it yet, you're planning on seeing it and don't want to be spoiled. But my two favorite movies are going to be the Batmobile movies. My two favorite scenes from the Batman are going to be the Batmobile chase between the Penguin and Batman. The camera use in this, it was claustrophobic. It was really tight, in the sense that like you couldn't see much whenever it would go into the car. But then and then the use of kind of like the other cars and the like surroundings within it, the orange tint to it, and then of course the way that it all ends in the Batmobile coming out of the fire, Penguin's car flipping over, and then Batman, which we saw in the trailer, but the way it's delivered, there's like this aggression to Bruce Wayne and the Batman during this part, which I think was really great. And then again, we get to see that aggressive nature in my other favorite scene, which was an interrogation scene at Arkham Hospital, between Arkham Asylum or Arkham Hospital. I'm not sure if they changed that in the movie, but between the Riddler and the Batman, and you see his ferocity, his anger, his aggressiveness, the Batman's, but you also see the Riddler's sort of like chaotic nature, and how he really does have this narrative fit in his head. But yeah, during that scene, there's the sound design, I think, in that scene is just perfection. The performance from Robert Pattinson, where he's getting very nervous about what the Riddler knows, and then of course Paul Dano, Edward Enigma, I think is what it is. Yeah, he just, it's so creepy in that scene. And yeah, so overall, this review went way longer than I meant it to, but overall I would give the Batman a solid, it's like a 95 out of 100 for me. Yeah, I don't really see that dropping. Like No Way Home kind of dropped for me, but I would say it's a 95 out of 100, and I think it'll only go up over time.